Cleveland didn't just lose a football game. They were exposed on national television under the bright lights of Ford Field. The Browns weren't simply outplayed, they were dismantled, humiliated, and left searching for answers after a brutal 34-10 collapse against the Detroit Lions. This wasn't a loss that fades by Monday morning. This was the kind of defeat that burns into a franchise's DNA, one that fans will point to as the night everything cracked. From the very first snap, it felt wrong. Joe Flacco looked like a man dragging his career through cement, lobbing passes that floated into danger, stumbling through reads like a quarterback who still thought it was 2012. His stat line told the story. 16 completions, 184 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions that sucked the oxygen out of the stadium before Cleveland could even breathe. And yet, he stayed on the field. Play after play, mistake after mistake, while the one name fans screamed for stayed chained to the sideline. Shedeur Sanders. The cameras knew where to cut. Every interception, every 3 and out, every boo raining down from furious fans. They went right to him. The rookie with his helmet resting at his side, arms folded, face locked in frustration as his team collapsed without him. And then came the chance, echoing across Ford Field, shaking through televisions nationwide. We want Shedeur! We want Shedeur! That was the image that defined the night. Not Detroit celebrating. Not Flacco's interceptions. Not Stefanski's blank stare on the sideline. No. The defining image was the future of the franchise sitting in silence while the present crumbled in flames. And a fallout? Immediate. Analysts on ESPN thundered it was organizational malpractice. NFL Network called it coaching suicide. Even local reporters, normally protective of Cleveland's mistakes, said what everyone was thinking. The Browns weren't just losing. They were refusing to win. This wasn't just a defeat. It was a reckoning. A statement that something is deeply broken inside the walls of Berea. And the cruelest part? Everyone, fans, teammates, even ownership, knows the answer is standing right there, waiting for a chance he may never get. If there was ever a night that felt cursed from the opening drive, it was this one. The Browns didn't just stumble out of the gate against Detroit. They fell flat on their face and never got back up. From the first series, the offense looked lost, predictable, and lifeless. Joe Flacco shuffled into his drops like a man moving through wet cement, his passes sailing high, wobbling short, or landing directly in the hands of Detroit's defenders. By halftime, the score wasn't the only thing lopsided. The body language told the whole story. One team was attacking, the other was surviving. Detroit didn't need to be spectacular to take control. Jared Goff was efficient, calm, and mercilessly precise, throwing for 2 touchdowns without ever breaking a sweat. The Lions' ground game, led by Jahmyr Gibbs, leaned on Cleveland's defense until it cracked. Every run seemed to take more out of the Browns, wearing them down snap by snap until by the third quarter, Detroit was marching at will. Meanwhile, Cleveland's offense delivered nothing but pain. Flacco's final stat line, 16 completions, 184 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, looked every bit as ugly as it felt to watch. Drives ended before they began. Opportunities turned into disasters, and while Flacco labored, Dylan Gabriel barely saw the field, a ghost in uniform, while Shedeur Sanders never left the bench. The lone spark came for rookie running back Quinshon Judkins, grinding out 82 yards and a touchdown, but asking one rookie back to carry a broken franchise against a playoff-caliber Lions team was hopeless from the start. By the time the clock hit 0, the scoreboard read 34-10. But the numbers didn't capture the humiliation. Fans in the stands had long since erupted in boos. "We want Shedeur!" chants rained down like thunder, drowning out any attempt at damage control. It wasn't just a loss. It was a collapse. Offense, defense, special teams, coaching, all failing in unison. And when the final whistle blew, the Browns weren't just beaten by Detroit. They were exposed to the entire league as a team too stubborn, too fractured, and too afraid to use the one player who might actually save them. Cleveland didn't wait until Monday morning to react. The revolt started before the final whistle even blew at Ford Field. As Joe Flacco jogged off the field after his second interception, the boos shook the stadium like thunder rolling off Lake Erie. But this wasn't the polite frustration of a restless crowd. It was rage. It was betrayal. It was years of heartbreak boiling over into one deafening roar. By the fourth quarter, the chants grew louder and clearer. "We want Shedeur!" Over and over, echoing through the stands, captured live on national television. Social media exploded in real time. Clips of Sanders standing on the sideline, helmet dangling at his side, face locked in frustration, hit millions of views within hours. One video carried the caption, "The future is right there, and they refuse to use him." That single line became the rallying cry of a movement. Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube comment sections turned into a digital riot. Hashtag Free Shedeur trended alongside hashtag Fire Stefanski, with fans demanding answers. They weren't asking politely. They were calling for heads to roll. One viral post compared stats side by side. Shedeur Sanders at Colorado, 4,134 yards, 37 touchdowns. Joe Flacco with Cleveland, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Someone explained this like I'm 5. Another summed it up with pure exhaustion. We've watched the same movie for 25 years. Veterans lose games while our young talent rots. When does it end? Even the loyalists, the fans who normally defend the team through every storm, admitted they were out of faith. Season ticket holders threatened boycotts. Local sports radio was flooded with furious callers demanding change. For once, everyone seemed united, not around hope, but around outrage. And that was the scariest part for the Browns. This wasn't a small faction of restless fans. It was the whole city, from the dog pound to the suburbs, turning their backs on a franchise they've bled for. Cleveland fans are loyal to the bone, but when that loyalty snaps, it snaps hard. And on that night, under those lights, the Browns learned the truth. They weren't just losing games. They were losing their people. If fans were outraged in the stands, ownership was fuming in the press box. Multiple insiders described Jimmy Haslam's reaction during the collapse at Ford Field as nothing short of volcanic. By the time the Lions' lead stretched past 3 touchdowns, Haslam was already pacing, red-faced, slamming his fist on the armrest. And when Joe Flacco threw his second interception of the night, sources say the Browns owner stormed out of his suite before the fourth quarter even began. The question on his lips, overheard by more than one staffer, was simple. Why draft Shedeur Sanders if we're just going to let him rot on the bench? For weeks, frustration had been building. Haslam poured hundreds of millions into this roster, revamping facilities, paying for stars, making bold moves that signaled a win-now mentality. Yet here he was, watching his franchise drag into the mud by a 40-year-old quarterback past his prime, while the most promising rookie in years stood helplessly on the sideline. To him, this wasn't just losing football. It was organizational malpractice. Insiders claim Haslam confronted front office personnel immediately after leaving the suite, demanding answers. Some said his fury was directed squarely at Kevin Stefanski. Others whispered it extended to GM Andrew Berry for not stepping in sooner. One source put it bluntly. Jimmy didn't spend all this money to watch the Browns die in slow motion. He wants to see what the kid can do. Haslam has never been shy about making bold, even controversial decisions. And when ownership starts questioning not just results, but logic, the clock starts ticking. This wasn't a patient owner giving his coach room to breathe. This was a man who looked ready to blow up the entire operation if things didn't change. The cameras didn't catch Haslam's fury that night. But in Cleveland, the whispers spread fast. Players knew it, coaches knew it, and by morning, every headline screamed the same warning. Stefanski's leash had just gotten razor thin, because when the owner loses patience, the rest of the organization has no choice but to follow. The morning after the collapse at Ford Field, the Browns facility was quiet on the outside, but fractured on the inside. Behind closed doors, the locker room, once sold as a united front, looked more like a divided house. For weeks, frustration had been simmering. Defensive leaders whispered about carrying the team while the offense bled away gains. Offensive linemen grumbled about protecting quarterbacks who couldn't move the ball. But after Detroit, the dam broke. One player, speaking anonymously, said it bluntly. "We're busting our heads out there blocking, and for what? For drives that end in turnovers. Something has to change." The defense wasn't shy either. They had held teams under 20 points most of the season, an elite stat by any standard. But when Flacco gifted the Lions 2 interceptions, veterans on that side of the ball erupted. According to insiders, one defensive captain told teammates, "We're keeping teams off the board, but we can't score touchdowns for the offense too. Enough is enough." What made the tension worse was what everyone already knew. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just another rookie. He'd shown poise in preseason, accuracy in practice, flashes of leadership that veterans respected. Some players had even started whispering that he looked sharper than the vets Cleveland kept throwing out there. One insider summed it up perfectly. "The kid can play. Everyone sees it, everyone knows it, and we're wasting time." That reality created cracks Stefanski could no longer paper over. Veterans started aligning on different sides. Some still loyal to Flacco's experience, others desperate for Sanders' spark. The divide wasn't just offense versus defense anymore. It was future versus past, hope versus denial. The Browns weren't just battling opponents, they were battling themselves. And every wasted snap without Sanders only deepened the cracks in a locker room that once believed but now questioned if their own coach was willing to save the season. Because when players stop believing the guy in charge is giving them the best chance to win, the collapse doesn't just happen on the field, it spreads from within. For most NFL franchises, quarterback struggles are a bad season. For Cleveland, it's a generational wound. Since the team returned in 1999, the Browns have started 32 different quarterbacks, 32 experiments, 32 promises, 32 failures. It's a cycle so ingrained that fans don't just fear it anymore, they expect it. The names read like a graveyard of what could have been. Tim Couch, the original savior, beaten down behind weak protection until his body gave out. Brady Quinn, the golden boy from Notre Dame, who never matched the hype. Johnny Manziel, more headlines than highlights. Baker Mayfield, who flirted with stability before the relationship collapsed in bitterness. Then came Deshaun Watson, bought with record-breaking money and years of baggage, only to stumble into inconsistency and off-field chaos. Each was sold as the quarterback to end the curse. Each became another chapter in Cleveland's tragic saga. And now, with Shedeur Sanders, the cycle threatens to repeat itself again. This isn't just about football. It's about a city that's been told too many times that salvation was on the way, only to watch hope rot on the bench. Sanders is supposed to be different. A rookie with elite production, charisma, and the Sanders name backing him. He's the type of quarterback you build an identity around. But instead of letting him take the field, Cleveland is clinging to a 40-year-old relic of the past in Joe Flacco. To fans, it feels like deja vu. Another talent wasted. Another future suffocated before it begins. Former Browns legend Bernie Kosar said it best. You have to let young quarterbacks succeed and fail. Sitting on the bench doesn't make anyone better. But in Cleveland, history says otherwise. Every snap Sanders doesn't take feels like a ghost dragging the Browns back into the same cycle, the same revolving door, the same heartbreak. And fans are left wondering if this so-called curse isn't just bad luck. It's a mindset, an unwillingness to change that keeps the Browns trapped in their own legacy of failure. If the boos at Ford Field were thunder, the media reaction afterward was the lightning strike that lit the sky. Overnight, Cleveland's humiliation against Detroit wasn't just a local story, it was the NFL's headline. The Browns didn't just lose, they became the league's punching bag. National outlets tore into Kevin Stefanski with the kind of precision usually reserved for playoff collapses. On ESPN, one analyst didn't mince words. This isn't conservative coaching, it's malpractice. You're choosing to lose. Over on NFL Network, the tone was even sharper. Cleveland is sitting the future of their franchise while trotting out a 40-year-old who looks like he's playing in slow motion. That's not leadership, that's sabotage. Sports Talk Radio amplified the outrage. Callers hammered the coaching staff, wondering aloud why a rookie with Shedeur Sanders' pedigree and preseason flashes was still holding a clipboard. Clips of Sanders on the bench, helmet off, arms crossed, jaw tight, spread across social media like wildfire. One viral caption summed it up. The future is right there, and they refuse to use him. Cleveland isn't just bad, they're refusing to win. And as if the firestorm needed more fuel, the national talk shows ran with it. Stephen A. Smith labeled the Browns terrified of their own future. Rich Eisen pressed the question every fan wanted answered. At what point do you admit the plan isn't working? For Stefanski and the Browns, the media storm wasn't just noise, it was pressure. Because once the narrative shifts from losing games to wasting Sanders, it's no longer about box scores, it's about credibility. And in the NFL, once credibility slips, the clock on your job starts ticking loud enough for everyone to hear. When the Browns walked off Ford Field after their collapse against Detroit, the boos weren't the end of it. They were just the beginning. Within hours, the loss had morphed from another bad Sunday into a national crisis, igniting one of the most brutal media pile-ons the franchise has seen in years. The tone was unforgiving. ESPN's morning lineup opened with a blunt headline. This isn't losing, it's malpractice. Analysts pointed out the obvious contradiction. A team desperate for energy, leaving its most dynamic player, Shedeur Sanders, strapped to the bench, while Joe Flacco lumbered through another lifeless outing. On NFL Network, the criticism was sharper still. You don't build for the future by clinging to the past, one voice spat. This isn't conservative coaching. It's sabotage in real time. Sports Talk Radio fanned the flames. Cleveland callers seethed, and national shows piled on with ridicule. By the afternoon, clips of Sanders on the bench, helmet beside him, eyes locked on the field as if waiting for a call that never came, were everywhere. One viral tweet read, "Key threw 37 TDs at Colorado. Flacco has 2 in Cleveland. Explain it like I'm 5. It racked up millions of views in hours. Even Cleveland's local press, usually more protective of the team, abandoned caution. Beat reporters wrote that the Browns didn't just look bad, they looked like they didn't belong in the league. One columnist accused Stefanski of coaching scared, while another said the Browns were refusing to win. The narrative only intensified when national personalities got involved. Stephen A. Smith called Cleveland's approach terrified of the future. Rich Eisen, normally diplomatic, pressed. At what point do you admit the plan isn't working? The framing was consistent across every outlet. The Browns weren't just losing games, they were wasting the only reason for hope. For Stefanski, this wasn't just another Monday of second guessing. This was a credibility crisis. Once the storyline shifts from bad football to burying your future quarterback, the pressure doesn't just come from fans. It comes from sponsors, owners, and the league itself. And in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski's words at the podium after the Detroit disaster were supposed to calm the storm. Instead, they poured gasoline on it. Asked point blank why Shedeur Sanders hadn't seen the field, the coach leaned into his well-worn defense. Joe gives us the best chance to win right now. But nobody was buying it. Not the fans, not the media, not even many inside his own locker room. The numbers made his claim indefensible. Joe Flacco's stat line, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a quarterback rating scraping the bottom of the league, told the truth. The offense had broken 13 points only once with him under center. By contrast, Sanders carried a college resume glowing with production. Over 4,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, and a 74% completion rate at Colorado. Not to mention a preseason in Cleveland that showed poise and flashes of leadership. When Stefanski clung to his talking point, it didn't sound like leadership. It sounded like denial. And denial has consequences. Because every week the Browns refuse to put their rookie on the field, they aren't just risking losses, they're wasting time. In the NFL, time is the one currency you can't buy back. The ownership clock is already ticking. Reports describe Ginny Haslam's frustration as boiling over, his patience wearing thin with each wasted drive. The locker room clock is ticking too. Veterans know what they see in practice, and whispers about the kid being the best quarterback in the room are getting louder. And the fan clock? It may have already run out. Patience in Cleveland is gone, replaced by a full-throated demand for change. Every second Stefanski doubles down, the situation grows more volatile. Once a head coach loses the faith of the fans, the media, and the locker room, it's only a matter of time before he loses the job. And right now, Stefanski's clock is counting down in real time. Off. And the fan clock? It may have already run out. Patience in Cleveland is gone, replaced by a full-throated demand for change. Every second, Stefanski doubles down. The situation grows more volatile. Once a head coach loses the faith of the fans, the media, and the locker room, it's only a matter of time before he loses the job. And right now, Stefanski's clock is counting down in real time.